has over 27 years of experience in software testing. He is Canadian, living in Florida, and is currently the head of testing at Saks of Fifth. He is one of 5 instructors of the Rapid Software Testing course. So, welcome, Paul. The floor is all yours.
Is this on? Can you hear me? All right. So, Fede asked me to give a talk, and I gave him a few choices, and he selected this topic. So, if it's good, it's all me, and if it's bad, it's Fede's fault. So, I was just introduced, but I've been doing this for a very long time. I am one of the 5 instructors of the Rapid Software Testing course that was created by James Bach and Michael Bolton. My current role is head of testing, although my official role in the HR system is senior test automation architect, because they don't have a role called head of testing. And I can't be a director or a VP because I have no direct reports, so it's bizarre. And I used to be in the Canadian military, and I flew Sea King helicopters for a few years. So, but that was a long time ago, over 28 years ago. So, weird, it didn't show up here. So, to answer the question, where are we heading, I feel we need to look back at where we've been. So, one of the things that's bothered me a lot about being a software tester right from the very beginning is that software testers are told how to do their job by people who are not software testers and don't know about software testing. So we are told to use certain tools, we're told to write out detailed test scripts, we're told to do all these types of things that are not helpful in good software testing. And it's typically by senior people, C-level executives, chief financial officers who have purchased a tool, or other executives that don't know testing, but they've heard that it's the right thing to do, so they tell us to do it. But they don't tell the product owners how to do product ownership. They don't tell the developers how to write their code, although they might have them jump through some hoops, like unit testing and things like that. But for some reason, everybody thinks that they can tell software testers how to do their job. So I tried to figure out why. And maybe it's because we haven't historically done a good job of showing how we provide value by doing it not in the way that we're being told. Although, if you're joining a company that already has these ways in place, it's hard to provide value. So maybe it's also because software testing looks easy. Have your friends who aren't software testers ever found a bug and they come to you and they say, look, I'm using this app, is this a bug? And you go, yeah, that's a bug. And, oh, yeah. So they think they can be a software tester. But just because there's so many bugs all over the place in all the software we use now, doesn't mean that it's easy to find the important bugs. And I'm old, and I remember a long time ago when I first started, I used to be surprised if I found a big bug in software that I used. Now I'm surprised if I don't find any bugs in a software that I'm just using. And I don't look for bugs. Bugs, they're just there all the time. So software testing looks easy, and especially recently with how crappy software testing is getting, software itself is getting. Maybe we get told how to do our job because testing has just been done poorly in the past. And this is especially since the ISTQB has certified people. You get a certification to test poorly. The ISTQB historically has told people how to test badly, and then you get a certification for it that companies demand you have, and then they want you to test that way. So why does the ISTQB do that? It's way and then it cuts out, and it comes back. It's happened all day. It's way easier to have to teach people how to test poorly because it's a rote way of doing it. Follow these obvious steps and then answer this 40-question multiple choice test, and now you're certified. Anyway. And outsourcing companies, a long time ago when I first started in the 90s, they commoditized the profession of software testing. They intentionally made it so that they could resell software testing in chunks the way ISTQB has you do it, because it's much easier than doing good software testing. So, I'm now going to go through some historic bad, they're all bad, trends in software testing. Many of these come from the ISTQB, which is wonderful, my favorite organization. So one of the things that many of us learned was write out your detailed test cases, write out your scripts in a way that is easy to read, easy to follow, and has all of the steps there with the expected results. Now, I know this is happening a little bit less now than it was, but remember, this is a historic trend. And this was rampant in the late 90s and early 2000s. So what were the pros of writing out detailed test cases? Well, theoretically, it allows anyone to execute the test. That is way smaller than I wanted it to be, sorry. It theoretically allows anyone to execute the tests. It shows your stakeholders exactly what was tested. It allows for the tracking of the tests in regulated industries. And it shows a methodical approach and thoroughness. Okay? So what are the cons? Well, it's really slow. It's ineffective. It actually doesn't allow anybody to execute tests. So we're going to take that one away from the pros. And I'll explain that one a little bit. When I was working in telecom, around the year 2000, maybe 2005, in that range, I was talking with a senior director at Nortel, which was a Canadian telecommunications company. They made lots of the switches that your offices would have had down here, phone switches and backbone switches. And the lady who was the senior director in charge of system testing had a team, a fairly large team, 20 or so testers, people, humans, who had to execute scripts, sadly. And when they found a bug, if it was found while they were executing a script, they ticked the box in JIRA equivalent at the time that said it was found running a script. And they had, in 1 year, 1,280 bugs that were found executing scripts. And this lady, she didn't believe that the scripts had found that many bugs. So she had somebody on her team go through all 1,280 bugs and see if they were found by the script. So the script said, do A, look for B, and B didn't happen. Script found the bug. Or found by a diligent tester. Do A, look for B, and hey, C, that's not supposed to happen. Script didn't find the bug. A diligent tester found the bug by being observant and knowing what they were doing. Knowing the switch, knowing the product. Not anybody, but somebody who knew the product, who knew what they were doing. And she found that 80% of the bugs were not found by the scripts, but were found by a diligent tester. So if you had anyone execute the tests, they wouldn't have had 1,200 defects found. They would have had substantially less, probably just a few hundred. So anyone can't execute the scripts, even if they're detailed. So it also doesn't show stakeholders what was tested. Have you ever asked the stakeholders, oh, I've written out these detailed test cases, have you read them? They will not have read them. They say they will read them. They don't read them. So the stakeholders don't know exactly what was tested. It is also not needed for regulated industries. I have worked in medical, I have worked in finance, I have worked in telecommunications, and I've worked in insurance. 4 industries in Canada and the United States, all regulated. None of them require detailed test cases. There are many ways around having detailed test cases in a regulated industry that pass audits no problem. So yes, it allows for tracking, but it's actually not needed. It also doesn't show a methodical approach and thoroughness. It actually shows a lack of imagination and creativity, because instead of coming up with multiple scenarios, you come up with 1 or 2 or just a handful. So we'll get rid of that one too. It's also, as a big con, really boring. Is anybody here who does write test cases? Anybody? Okay. Who enjoys writing the test cases? Interesting. Who enjoys executing detailed test cases that you have to follow step by step instead of, thinking and being creative? Nobody. Excellent. So, there is one more pro. It allows contracting companies to more easily sell their services. You'll see a trend. All right, another bad historical trend was testers provide a lot of information historically, usually big test reports, but they don't provide any useful or actionable information. So the test reports rely on metrics, typically that are generated by test case management tools. They produce beautifully pretty charts with burn downs and pass-fail rates and a whole bunch of other metrics that are useless. So useless that they're dangerous, because stakeholders are making decisions based on numbers that literally don't mean anything. I'll explain that if we have time later on. Someone asked that question. So, I just said this. They don't provide useful information in determining the state of the system under test, and yet stakeholders use them. We historically don't tell a good story when we're giving a test report. Historically, testers say, here's the pass-fail rate. We've executed 1,212 tests, and we have a 98% pass rate. Okay, can I ship? 98's a big number. 1,000 is a big number. Let's ship. They also don't link any bugs they found back to the business. So I found 10 bugs. Okay, are they important? Is it going to impact our customers? Is it going to impact us? Is it going to hurt anybody's chance of making money? We need to link back the defects to the business. But it's much easier to provide the bad, easy, auto-generate, hit the button and it prints out a chart and a map, and then you say, here you go, here's my test report. It's much easier, which is why it's so prevalent, but it is much less useful than doing a good test report. And this is not a talk on how to do a good test report. And very importantly, stakeholders do not care about the testing you've done unless you tell them why it's important that you did that testing. So if I say I've done 1,000 test cases, it sounds like a big number, but I might also say, but in that 1,000 test cases, we didn't test our payment system at all. There was no test for payment systems. That's much more useful information than saying I just executed 1,000 test cases. Another historic bad trend, and I don't know what happened to the title on these slides, but another historical bad trend is outsourcing most or all of the testing. So this happened very much in the late 90s and early 2000s. Big companies, Microsoft, HP, got rid of all of their testers in-house locally, and they outsourced it all, typically to lower cost areas. And instead of just supplementing their own internal teams, they outsourced the vast majority of it, keeping almost nobody internally. So the issues with this, if you are dealing with an outsourcing company, the good testers typically get moved off of your projects unless you're their biggest customer and move to other customers. When again, I was working at a fairly small telecom company called Newbridge, and Nortel was our competitor, I had multiple testers that finished their contract and went and worked for Nortel, a direct competitor of ours. Same outsourcing company, but the outsourcing company said, oh, you're good, you're doing really well, let's put you on Nortel's. And so all of the training I was doing to the people that I was working with was all helping Nortel. The contracting companies don't care about your business as much as they care about their own. They care about your business, but they care about their own more. So they're going to do what's important to themselves before they do what's important to you. Unless you're their biggest customer, you're going to get the short end of the stick. And this is the biggest point. Your company has no intellectual property. So instead of having a team that's dedicated to your product and that sticks around for multiple years inside your company, and I don't care if you're overseas, like we ended up when I was with Alcatel, excuse me, we had an Indian office, but we insourced in India. So we had an overseas office, but we hired the people to work directly for us instead of, so we could keep intellectual property. And that enabled us to train and bring new people up to speeds. And the new testers, they need to learn your products before they can really be effective, and the turnover rate is often much higher with contractors. So, those were just 3 bad trends. Okay, not doing badly. What happened with those trends? Well, unfortunately, many of them are still around in some respect today. Although some of the trends fizzled off a little bit, like Microsoft and HP both had outsourced a lot of their testing, and by the end of the 2000s had actually brought a lot of that testing back internally because they realized that they had lost their intellectual property, and so they tried to get it back. Some trends fizzled out, like bad test reporting isn't quite as prevalent. It's not for a good reason, though. It's been replaced with even worse test reporting. The red and the green, everything you need to know. The pipeline, is it red? Is it green? It is not everything you need to know. It is taking good test reporting and simplifying it even more to the point of, once again, it's not necessarily helpful. I'm not saying that just because it's red and green doesn't mean it can't be beneficial, but it's not a test report. It's a point of a test report. Why doesn't that's, okay, you saw it was blank, and I just went ahead and came back, and it's not blank anymore. Weird. All right, so what are some current trends? And there's no title. I have titles on my slides. I know I have titles on my slides. Actually, hold on a second. A disclaimer. See, I knew there was a title on it. So, my disclaimer is, I like automation. I really do. It's going to sound like I don't, but I like automation. Automation is important to having a fast-moving pipeline. It's important to quickly give feedback to the developers if they've broken something critical. It's important to have a really good test automation framework that will give you a good sanity test. Primarily in unit tests, but also some GUI and API level tests too. Good automation allows you to move faster. All right, now with that disclaimer, just remember that. I'm going to talk some shit about automation. So, automate everything. Remember, I like automation. I hate automate everything. It is a horrible, horrible trend. So what are the pros? It allows for faster software deployments. Yes. That one's even going to stay there. I'm not going to take that one away. It can execute very quickly. Okay, good. If it's good automation, which most automation isn't, but if it is good automation, it can provide a good sanity check of your product, and it can reduce the need for some exploratory testers. Yes, I, who teach exploratory testing, will agree that if you have really good automation, you can have fewer testers. What are the cons? Well, it will only check what it's told to check. So if you code it to check that you go to a certain web page and that this number is 5 and it checks and it's 5, great. It might have another number beside it that it doesn't look at that might be wrong, but it will only check what you ask it to check. It's always going to check the same things and execute in the same way. There's no variation. If a human, even if they're executing the same written test, they will vary it just because they'll vary the timing, they'll get distracted, they'll hopefully do some interesting testing as well. Automation doesn't reason, doesn't think critically, it just does exactly what it's told. There's no creativity, no imagination. It doesn't ever see something interesting and go and explore it. It just, nope, I'm done. The maintenance costs can be high, and a human is still needed to investigate the failures, which can often take longer than just a human doing it in the first place. And we're not done. It can likely not reduce your costs because writing, debugging, and maintenance are going to take a lot of time. It will likely not allow you to eliminate testers, with the one exception of what I said, but somebody still actually needs to use the product, someone still actually needs to investigate the failures, someone actually still needs to find the bugs. It will likely not save you time, except in execution, because writing, maintenance, they all take time. And it will result in large gaps in your test coverage because, again, it only does the things that you have it do over and over and over again. And remember my disclaimer, I do like automation despite having 2 pages of cons. And it allows automation tool vendors to more easily sell their tools. Another bad trend, AI and machine learning can replace testers. I'll tell the story in a second. Let's go through the pros of AI and machine learning. Hold on, I'm getting one. You can say you work in AI and machine learning, that's cool. People will go, "Ooh, that's neat." And it can be very useful for comparison automation. So visual comparison, number comparison, huge amounts of data comparison, very good at that. Okay, we got one. All right. Cons. All of those cons that we went through on the previous first 2 pages, it's like you're a tier. You know, when you get, you're a blue member, you're now a silver member. You get all the blue benefits, plus the new silver. So we get all of the automation cons, plus you don't even know what's being tested. At least before you wrote the automation, it wasn't testing a lot, but it was testing what you told it to. Now, I don't know what it's testing. Now I'm going to tell you the story. There was a company who is not a sponsor, so I'm going to call them out, called Test Rigger. I was looking for something instead of browser, so we had Browser Stack, Lambda Test, Test Rigger, and 2 others that I was looking at. So that we're going to be developing at Saxoff Fifth a new app next year, a native app, and we didn't want to have to buy hundreds of physical devices and distribute them because we're mostly working remotely. So we thought something like Browser Stack or Lambda Test, and so I was tasked as the automation test architect to compare these tools. So I looked at Test Rigger. And two things happened. One of them, Daryl mentioned, if you were in his talk, that when I brought up the visual emulator of the physical device and I swiped up on it 3 times, it took 7 seconds for the first swipe, 5 seconds for the second swipe, 7 seconds for the third swipe to start, and then the phone crashed. I recreated it easily on an iPhone 12 and an iPhone XR. Just so, okay, well, that's no good. But then Test Rigger said, hey, we'll write you some automation. I thought, that sounds scary and bad, but I'm going to take you up on it. So I said, okay, and it said, how many tests do you want? I said, 10. And it said, that'll take us about 15 minutes. I said, perfect. Here's my URL. So with no other information, Test Rigger went to my URL of Saxoff Fifth, And 15 minutes later, it said, here's your 10 tests. So I looked at them, and none of them did anything even slightly close to useful. Every single one tried to log in with bad credentials, because I didn't give it any credentials. Every single one did a search. So the first 5 to 10 steps were the same on all 10 tests. Try to log in with wrong credentials, and then search for the word test rigger at Saks Off 5th. You know, maybe Gucci handbag would have gotten them something, but no. Anyway, nothing at all helpful. And so I thought, I'll modify one, because it says I can modify it. So I tried to modify it, and I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy who knows how to code, and I couldn't make it do anything that I wanted. So anyway, I had no idea what was being tested, and if you use some tools, they, low-code, no-code tools, they will create tests for you, but again, you really lose control over what they're doing. And how do they do it? Because it's artificial intelligence, machine learning. It learns algorithms, things that people have told it are important, from other systems. And then it tries to apply them to your system. But your systems are different. And if they're not different, then you're plagiarizing other people's systems, and you should stop it. But because your systems are different, it's using algorithms and rules from other systems that it's learning, and it's not learning. They're actually just pattern matching. Artificial intelligence has no intelligence. It's just pattern matching. And it might do some good pattern matching and do some good tests for you, but it might not. It might focus on the wrong thing. As I found out at Test Rigger, artificially intelligence code can be very difficult to modify. And if your interface changes, and I asked this of one of the premier AI companies, I said, we're looking at redoing our front end to a completely different look. And he said, oh, you'd have to throw everything away and start over. Fantastic. Excellent. Good to know. Oh, more cons. There's no reasoning. It's going to have defect. It's complicated software. It's really complicated software, so it's going to have defects. How do you know what they are? How does the company know what they are? And tools can be expensive and lock you in with proprietary code, and it's bad already that most companies, if you go to almost anybody at a company and say, what does your automation actually test? They can't tell you right now. They'll be able to even tell you less if they're using AI and machine learning. Oh, and guess what? It allows automation tool vendors more easily sell their services. That's what these trends are. Almost all the trends are coming from vendors of something. ISTQB selling certification, contracting companies selling outsourcing, tool vendors selling tools that help you do it. And all of them seem to want to help the testing community, and almost all of them are hurting the testing community by the way that they're marketing their tools. Some tools can be very useful. I was talking with Daryl, who works at Mabel, about how Mabel might be able to help us, and he had some really good ideas as to how the Mabel tool could help us. But if you look at their marketing, especially from 2 years ago, actually even 1 year ago, it's very detrimental because it indicates that you're going to replace human testers with the automation. Wow, I got to go way faster. All right, eliminating the role of human testers. No pros at all. I'm not even going to pretend. Cons. No one's actually going to use the product before it gets deployed. There's no one to question, ask the hard questions beforehand. No one can think critically and dig deep to find important bugs. Your customers are going to do a whole bunch of really interesting and cool things that your automation won't do, and you need a human there to look into it. And if there's no customer advocate saying, that was a really bad experience, we need to change that, and it's just it does what we wanted, it's going to help. So you might say saving money is a pro, but with no one overseeing the automation, your product's probably going to suck and you're going to lose money in the long run, is essentially what that says. So, holy crap, I got to go quick. So I expect the next few years are going to be difficult. It is going to take time for companies they're actually going to have to feel the pain of these trends. These trends are so far out of the station that they're being ingrained. I'm sure all of you have heard, oh yeah, we're going to automate that, we're going to have fewer testers. They're just trends that I think are going to reverse, but it's going to take a while. Hopefully they'll realize that the automation is going to be helping them supplement testing, and it's not going to be replacing it. So I propose that companies need to invest in good automation, which can reduce the number of software testers, but not eliminate them. All right, so we need to make ourselves more valuable, providing actionable information to stakeholders on the status of the product, finding defects that automation is missing. It's really not that hard, just use your product. They're all over the place. I've often run a quick test saying, here's a released piece of software, let's test it. There was one, a running app made by a underwear company that has good armor, I guess. Anyway, they're a running app, and out of the 6 teams that we had testing it, 5 of them said it shouldn't be released. It was already released, that's how bad it was. Anyway, you want to track the value that you're bringing and share it. If you make yourself important, they're not going to get rid of you. You need to make themselves valuable. Stop wasting time testing stupid, simple stories. If you have a 1-point story or, hey, a checkbox needs to show up, can you sign that off, please, tester? No. Is the checkbox there? Did you see it? Then just sign it off. I don't need to waste my time doing it. But if I test at the epic level instead, or at the feature level, I can use my creativity, my critical thinking, and I can find bugs that automation is going to miss. So giving the developers the responsibility for the easy stories and step back and focus their attention as a tester at the epic level, I think that'll be really important. And also, in your test reports and in your reporting, be a customer advocate. Say how the bugs are going to impact the customer and your own business, and explain why some defects are more important because automation can't. All right, last slide. Whew. Everyone needs to speak out about the importance and value that testers provide. We provide creativity, critical thinking, we question things, we can provide good test reports. Ask me later. Actually using the product. What is a manual tester? Well, one, it's like a manual coder, it's just a tester, but it's someone who uses the product like a customer. Being an advocate for the customer, finding defects that automation can't find, thinking differently, and the more voices we have, being an advocate of higher quality. You all need to have 3 eggs and say, testing is important. That works better if you translate that into Spanish. Anyway, thank you. This says thank you. It really does.
So much, Paul.
It's 30 minutes over.
Okay, so we're getting near the end. We have a few minutes for questions. So anyone want to go first? Want to volunteer? Break the ice?
Because I yell.
Then,
Oh, Eric's not scared.
there we go.
Why do you think it's so hard to communicate a value of testing? Why are we continually playing from behind and fighting uphill?
Honestly, I think it's because of that goes back to my very first slide. We, as a profession, have been sold the short end of the stick, being told how to do the job. People think that, oh, if you just write out the test case and you execute it and you enter your data in ALM, that's all you do. What so many people don't realize is that testing is hard. It's a thought-provoking, challenging, creative process, but it's been commoditized by so many vendors, so many companies, right from the beginning of the ISTQB saying, this is how you do testing, it's easy. I'm guessing most of you have seen the ISTQB syllabus. It's so in-depth and so, no, it's horrible. It's, by the people who don't understand testing, well, our former boss who doesn't know testing, in one of my first meetings with us, I've never seen him talk at a software testing conference. I've never heard of him before. And in my first meeting with him, he said, I know testing. I thought, no, you don't. Not based on what we just talked about. You were talking about detailed test cases and really, anyway. I honestly think it comes down to the commoditization of software testing has what, from way before you and I started in this field in the 90s, it started out that testing is something that can be simplified to the point that it's easy to outsource and easy to do in a rote way, even though it isn't. And that has gotten ingrained in the industry, sadly.
Okay.
Way at the back.
We
you can
have
get exercise.
another question in the back. There we go.
Okay, so I agree with everything that you said regarding the test cases. So what do you suggest we should start using instead of boring detailed test cases?
Oh, that's a good point. So instead of detailed test cases, I'm guessing everybody who executes your detailed test cases knows how to use your product. Do they need to be told that when I put in valid credentials that my expected result is to be shown my account screen? You know, I'm going to get logged in. You don't need to say that. So if you do need to have a scenario or a workflow, just do it at a very high level. Just say, log in, select a product to purchase it with Apple Pay, make sure you get the email at the end, because we're checking email. That's it. You don't have to tell people the exact steps to do, or you could just say, you don't even have to say log in. You can just say, buy products with Apple Pay, don't forget to check the email. I keep saying the email because that's something that's currently not working on the thing I'm testing. But so if there's something really important, you can say, don't forget to check that or check this. But honestly, just describe the scenario as loosely as you can, hitting the highlights, the important things. So if they need to pay with Apple Pay and credit cards and PayPal, then you can say, make a purchase using all the payment methods. So that, I have to run this 3 times using the 3 payment methods. But I don't have to write a detailed script out that says, put in 54545454, my favorite MasterCard fake number. It's all 5 4s. You don't have to specify that. It doesn't add any value. It just takes you time. And the way I do it, with it's just a high-level scenario, the maintenance cost is 0, because it never changes buying a product using all the payment methods. That's the same. But if I say, click on this checkout, but now the checkout button's moved, I have to go and maintain all the scripts that tell me where to click on checking out. So I'm just adding costs and slowing us down when really I just need to have something very, very high level as a scenario or description.
Okay, there we go.
Well, I will do the obvious question. How can we create better reports?
That is a one-day tutorial that I do. So the big thing is you want to tell a story about what was tested, what you tested, why it was important that you tested, what you didn't test. So I tend not to put any metrics. I don't say a percentage or I found 8 bugs. I don't put that in my test reports. I list the bugs. If I found 8 bugs, I'll list 8 bugs. If I found 100, I'll probably just pick the top 8 or 10 and say, there's many more at this link. But really, I talk about test coverage. I usually use a mind map, color-coded mind map, to show what was tested deeply, what was tested shallowly. So I make a mind map of the product and I show the coverage. I have a quick executive summary at the beginning that just says, we completed our testing. We found some show-stopping bugs. They appear that they should be fixed in the next week. In general, the product looks better than the previous release, that type of very high-level stuff. And then I show test coverage. I talk about the bugs that we found. I talk about risks that were addressed and were not addressed, any open questions, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple of things, but that's pretty much, and I usually just use a PowerPoint slide that has headings. I just use a PowerPoint slide, and it's like 5 to 7 slides, and that's it.
Great. There was another question in the front, no?
No, she
Okay.
doesn't want to talk anymore.
I know.
It's fine, I understand.
¿Alguien más? Nobody asked you the question you wanted to be asked about
What about the metrics?
dangerousness of the metrics and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. No, we're out of time.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, wait, sorry. She's gonna ask about the metrics.
Let's go.
No, it's not about the metrics. I'm going back to the test cases. I agree with you about using test scenarios instead of writing detailed test cases, but what indicates that you have a new test member on your team and that
Excellent question. I
that
know where you're-
person,
So if you don't know the product,
yeah.
just like the lady from Nortel who had the experienced people on her team, if you don't know the product, you shouldn't be executing detailed test cases or scenarios. You need to pair test with somebody. So when I, again, worked in telecom, for the first month that somebody joined my team, they only pair tested. They weren't even allowed in the lab unless they were with somebody else. And then for the next 2 months, they weren't allowed to raise defects without going over what they did with the team, because I tested a very complicated, tiny piece. But it's pair testing. You need to bring the skill level of the people doing the testing up so that they know what's a bug and what isn't a bug. And they also need to have a good rapport with other testers. So if they see something that wasn't covered, they need to say, oh, hey, Sabrina, can you tell me if this is a bug or not? So, make sense? Because just giving them the detailed test case, they'll go through like a robot and they won't notice any of the other bugs. And honestly, they're going to miss most of what they should be finding.
Thank you so much, Paul.